Good morning, everyone. A few days ago, Guelph had a town hall about COVID-19, about the current lockdown restrictions, about mask wearing, about all of the things that we've been experiencing since earlier this year. March 17th was the day that the lockdown started, and since then, it's funny. It was slow. We still haven't stopped international flights, and our numbers are ticking up, and our governments are losing their mind. They're saying, "Oh my goodness, second wave is here. We have to deal with this." The case numbers are extremely high. So I'm concerned about this because the case numbers may be high, but that's not the whole story. And that's all we're hearing about from the government, from every level of government. And what's odd to me is that every level of government has a different lens, right? Like the federal government looks at something differently than the province looks at something. And the city would look at something differently than the province and the federal government would look at it. Each level of government is responsible for different things. So it's really interesting that all three levels of government are completely on the same page without any kind of daylight between them. They're exactly the same. They think that we're doing exactly what we need to do, and there's nothing we're missing. Groupthink is dangerous. If everybody agrees in the room, bring some more people into the room, or have some people leave and find some other opinions, people who disagree. You should definitely do that if you think that three levels of government can agree like this. You would be wrong. Okay, now we'll get into this. I recorded the conversation. I recorded a lot of the phone call. I have a 40-minute recording, but what I'm going to let you listen to today right now is my question. I called in and I had a question, and my question was basically, when do we get back to normal? And the way I phrased it, well, is the way I usually phrase it. Here it is in its entirety, and I'm going to pause because I got answers from Lloyd, I got answers from Mike Schreiner, and I got answers from Cam Guthrie. So we're going to go through each one of them. Cam Guthrie just kind of echoed all the things that these guys said, but I'm going to let you listen to all of it. Okay, so with breaks in between for me to say my piece as well. So here we go.
And that's a question for the whole panel. Mark, you're joining us live. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Hello. I am wondering, well, you guys at all levels of government talk about how we're listening to the best minds in science, etc. But I've got the graphs here for Ontario, the Covid19.ontario.ca data, and I can see that the deaths in October are in 5, 6, 5, 7, 4 per day. And the deaths during the first wave were 57, 45. This is April 29th, 28th, May 1st, 39. So we're not seeing nearly the number of deaths that we saw in the first wave. We're seeing a lot of cases, but we're testing by 800% more. So my question is, when do we get to go back to regular life? When do we open things up? When do we respond to the fact that maybe a second wave of cases is happening, but this is not nearly as impactful or as deadly as the first wave? We need to respond to this. And the businesses being closed is not an effect of the virus, it's an effect of the government's reaction. And in the beginning, we didn't have any data and we needed to react that way. But we have 7 months of data now. We can see what's going on. And this draconian lockdown is not supported by the WHO. So when are we getting back to normal?
Maybe I can start with Mark's question, and thanks, Mark. I recognize your voice.
Hi, Lloyd.
We were on a few debates together a while back.
We were, yep.
The concern of deaths is definitely one of the most critical concerns we have, but we also have the concern of overloading the healthcare system. And as we see the numbers of people that are getting the daily cases numbers coming in of people that are getting infected by COVID-19, the concern is that will spread into the community, into elderly people or people that are vulnerable to the disease to the point where they have to be hospitalized. And having the load on the healthcare system has been one of the big concerns from the start. And because of the exponential growth, if we do get a load on the healthcare system, it's going to be a big load in a hurry. So that's what we're working with through public health and through the epidemiologists that are giving us the advice of how we can manage through this wave. So as Cam said in his opening remarks, we can flatten this curve again, because this time the curve is steeper and higher.
But it's not though.
We have to be able to get on top of that before we overburden the healthcare system. Historically, the second waves are more dangerous.
Right,
but that's the advice that we're getting.
Can you guys still hear me or no? I'm not sure.
If you want to add, I'll turn it back over to you.
Can you guys hear me or no?
Thanks, Mark.
So they couldn't hear me. And I'm going to say that in just a minute. Oh, they can't hear me. But I think that it's really interesting that Lloyd is in this call, and there's 5,400 people on this call, according to the Mercury, and we'll get there in just a minute, Guelph Mercury Tribune. But he's saying we've got to flatten this curve because it's steeper and higher. Well, there's one curve that's steeper and higher, I guess, and that's cases, but we're testing by 800% more. 800% more. And the positivity rate is not 800% more. I don't even think it's 100% more. I don't know what it is, but it's not 800% more. Look at the deaths. Look at the deaths. Here's one curve, right? This is the death curve attributed to COVID-19 in the first wave. And here's the death curve attributed to COVID-19 in the second wave, right? And yes, I'm saying attributed to COVID-19 on purpose. On purpose. I am a skeptic. And that's okay. We live in a democracy. I'm allowed to believe whatever I want. And I'm allowed to state my beliefs because we live in a free country. Unless you use Twitter, right? Right. So that's my concern with Lloyd Longfield's concern, or with Lloyd Longfield's statement. He focused completely on the cases, and he said if those cases start ending up to be hospitalizations, we're going to be have a big problem. There is absolutely no comparison between the first and the second wave. None. And anybody who says that there is lying. They're believing an expert's model over their lying eyes and the lying data in front of them. We have 7 months of data, and they are ignoring it. And ignoring it enthusiastically to citizens who are questioning, why are we putting all of this pressure on businesses? Why are we destroying our history, our culture, our everything for something that looks to be just as bad as a flu? Okay, we'll carry on to the next. This is the provincial Mike Schreiner. He's the Green MP, and he's the Ontario Green leader. Here we go.
For the question.
No, they can't hear me.
I've had the opportunity to have a number of briefings with Dr. Williams, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and just the provincial health roundtable. And the concern now is exactly what Lloyd said, is around capacity in hospital. And so I know Guelph General, as just an example locally, is already experiencing overcapacity, and a lot of that we experienced prior to COVID, and so then COVID has put even more pressure on hospital.
So here's the issue with what Mr. Schreiner is saying. And Mr. Schreiner is representing the province. The province is responsible for healthcare, so he's focused on healthcare. And he's saying that Guelph General is at capacity. Now, the interesting thing about that is I know people who work in hospitals, maybe you do too, and prior to COVID, the hospital was running at 100 to 120% most of the time. If you weren't at 100%, then it was a slow day. If you were at like 90%, the hospital seemed slow. And over COVID, a friend of mine works at a hospital, and him and I were talking, and he said to me that the hospital is probably running at 70% capacity. So now they've reset everything, and now Guelph General is running. And here's a Brampton hospital. This is from January 22nd. Brampton City Council declares healthcare emergency, calls for more funding. The Brampton City Council unanimously declared a healthcare emergency Wednesday, demanding more funding for 2 of its hospitals. Mayor Patrick Brown said the move sends a strong signal to the province to act quickly and provide the city with the healthcare funding it deserves. We're in dire straits and we need folks at Queen's Park to wake up, Brown said. If you live in Brampton, you have a substandard level of healthcare because of the inadequate provincial funding. Interesting. This is before COVID. This is January. In January, you were being called a racist if you were floating ideas of closing the border because of what we were seeing coming out. Actually, this was the day before even Trump got, I think Trump was briefed on the 23rd. Regardless, COVID was not part of the conversation in January, and Ontario hospitals were at capacity. Is this a COVID problem? Why are we shutting down businesses? Why are we shutting down our economy and our culture? Thanksgiving, Halloween, Christmas being threatened by our Prime Minister to address hospital capacity issues. Is that all this is, Mr. Schreiner? Hospital capacity issues? We're now worried that hospital capacity issues are going to push us over the top? That's been a problem for literally years, sir. Literally years. Is that really going to be your excuse to close down massive amounts, like large swaths of private businesses, from gyms to nightclubs to dance studios and restaurants and bars? Are you serious? Is that seriously the justification the provincial representative uses in a town hall meeting? And sure, Guelph's not locked down, but is it okay to destroy Toronto and Ottawa and Peel's small businesses? That's just fine. What? What kind of insanity is this? This is absolutely not appropriate. Okay. Here, carry on, Mr. Schreiner.
Big concern right now, and we haven't quite gotten there yet, but we're headed in that direction is a combination of an increasing COVID positive numbers, which right now has been primarily in the second wave so far, people under 40. But as that starts to spread into people over 40, and in particularly more elderly populations, the concern is that combined with cold and flu season, and just typical flu season puts a lot of pressure on hospitals.
So first, Mr. Schreiner was talking about how the impact of COVID-19 in the second wave have been mostly people under 40. Miss Tam, Dr. Tam, has been tweeting about that a lot, that it's under 40. But 5 days ago, this was released, spread shifts to seniors as outbreaks rise in long-term care homes. So it's not people under 40. It's not people in nightclubs and restaurants and bars. It is people in long-term care homes again. And they're locking those down again. But having the outbreaks in under 40 has resulted in very few deaths. If it was even true in the first place, because I don't know what data they're using to say that. And if it's moved into the senior population, well, that was at least 5 days ago. What's the lag on the data? We're not seeing any increase in deaths at this point in time. Do we have the right procedures and protocols in place? Why are we willing to shut down, and why are we willing to remove these people's rights? Here's CP24. No more outings for residents of long-term care homes in Toronto, Peel, or Ottawa. Residents of long-term care homes in 3 Ontario regions where COVID-19 cases are surging won't be allowed to go out for social or personal reasons as of Friday. That's right now, today. The provincial government says short-term and temporary absences for medical or compassionate reasons, however, will still be allowed. Oh, lucky them. These people weren't sentenced to this. These people have no recourse for this. There's no bail they can pay to get out. They can't appeal to a parole board or a group of people to say, yes, you can go out to the shops today, Martha, no problem, right? Well, it looks like you've done all of your social distancing and you're wearing the mask, so you can go out today, Martha. No, there's not even that. You can't do that. You're just not allowed. When did these people lose these rights? Do you and I have these rights until the government says no? This is egregious and unbelievable. And you should be, if you have a parent in here in a care home, this is a violation of human rights. Take it to the Human Rights Tribunal. Get a lawyer and do it now. This is unbelievable. Unbelievable. If I could hire a lawyer, because I don't represent anybody, but I would. This is unbelievable. This is an egregious violation of rights. And I hope that somebody fights this. We need to fight this. The way I'm fighting this is by asking our leadership, what in the hell are you thinking, you morons? I'll carry on. Sorry, hold on. I've got multiple controls up here, sorry.
About a month from now, or even just a few weeks from now, you're going to see lots of pressure on hospital capacity. And so, I think in many respects, for the sake of our frontline healthcare workers who have really put themselves on the line for the last 7 months, if we can all, as a community, can work together to contain the spread as much as possible, it takes the pressure off those frontline healthcare workers who put themselves at risk every day to care for people. And then the second thing I would say around the closures, and I've had this conversation directly with the Premier, is that, and I believe this is the approach the government is taking right now, and I believe will continue to take, is that the closures during the second wave, the strategy is to be targeted closures. So in the first wave, it was kind of just locked down because we were dealing with a new virus that people didn't understand very well. In the second wave, they're really looking at targeted locations. So most of the new restrictions have been limited to Ottawa, Peel, and Toronto, where you're seeing the most case counts rising, and are targeted to those businesses where they're seeing the infection rate that are driving the increases in the infection rates.
Where's the evidence? And I said, where's the evidence? Because there is no evidence. They have no evidence to do this. Here's Ottawa businesses demand data from province to justify closures. This is 2 days ago, October 13th. Today's the 15th. There's no evidence. They're saying that, yeah, it's gyms and nightclubs and restaurants and blah, 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 but they don't have evidence to back this up. It's the only evidence they have is the Dr. Tam saying it's under 40-year-olds transmitting this disease currently. And I say again, when you've got the only way to fight this is to stand up and fight this, is to take the fines and fight them in court and say, you don't have the power to do this. You are not allowed to do this. We have basic rights. We have the right to assess our own risk. We have the right to open our businesses to people who can assess their own risk and enter the business of their own choosing and volition. But right now, it's the government locking down in a targeted way. What's the target? Like, are you going to just destroy restaurants, bars, nightclubs, and then let big players in, right? Like the McDonald's and the multinationals, the big corporations, the Walmarts of these worlds get to stay open because they've got locations in different parts of the world and they won't go bankrupt. Like that is what is going on here. Targeted means nothing when targeted is taking out like the bottom third of small businesses, restaurants, bars, nightclubs. Come on. And I've heard dance studios are concerned because they're not gyms, and gyms are saying, how come our classes are closed when dance studios can open? It's a mess. It is a poorly thought out mess that is completely unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. And these people who are our leaders should know it and should be standing up for the citizenry to the people who are using cases to justify this garbage. Back to Mr. Schreiner.
Keeping other businesses open, because you're right. The economic devastation and the mental health crisis that's coming out of that is very debilitating, as COVID is, and so it's trying to balance all of that. So I think we'll continue to see very targeted measures in the second wave, and targeted measures driven by what the public health data is telling us. Mark, back to you.
It's Cam here. I love going last after Lord they've distinctly basically said what I would have said as well. And just to reiterate, I'm looking out for our health care capacity, and that's the hospital and those frontline workers. So. Especially in the winter months where we have regular influenza and other related issues that can start to increase capacity at our hospital in town. This COVID being an added element to this time of season can become problematic, and we are already experiencing that with capacity issues at our hospital anyways, and everyone knows that. So it is all hands on deck, and I should say all washed hands on deck, to make sure that we are making our decisions for the sake of our hospital capacity, and that's what I'm thinking about, and I believe that's what most people are thinking about as well as we continue to wade through this. I will say though that Mark's questions are, in my opinion, they're valid. They are valid, and I think that is why, as Mike just said, this isn't a blanket lockdown. It is strategic, and it's identifying the areas in the province that have that, and that is why we need to, in Guelph, continue the things that we're doing, because I don't want to be able to be a mayor that stands in front of a camera again or a video and says, oh, we gotta do what the province says, and now we gotta lock down our whole city again. I don't want to go there ever again, so let's continue to pull together as a community so we don't have that problem.
Well, at least Cam and I agree on that. I don't ever want to see Guelph locked down ever again. The leaders did not discuss the low death numbers or the low ICU numbers. They talked about hospital capacity instead. The leaders did not discuss the fact that the lockdown is not supported by the WHO. The leaders did not address when we will get back to normal. They ignored that and instead addressed it by restating that we have to continue to do the COVID dance, right? Despite the fact that the cases and the deaths, the cases are up by a lot, sure, but they're certainly not up by 800%, and the hospitalizations and ICU numbers are not ticking up in lockstep with the amount of cases, and not even close to the cases and deaths we saw in the early part of this situation. Here's the news article about this, and I read this yesterday on Canada Poly. This is going to be up on both of my channels, my Mark Paralavis and Canada Poly, but basically we went through it, and my question was the one that was quoted. I'm not going to read this now. I'll leave the link in the description. But I think that it was a fine piece. It didn't. I thought they were going to try and make me into a crackpot, crazy People's Party candidate wants to have people open back up. But yes, I do. And I think it's a very serious thing that the leadership isn't addressing. The fact that the WHO doesn't support this, the data doesn't support a lockdown, even in Toronto, Peel, and Ottawa. And why are these humans, whose job it is to stand up for the citizenry that they represent, just fine with it going along with this? It's unbelievable. Here's a last little bit. This video is way longer than I thought it was going to be. Here's the last two little bit stories here. One is about the flu numbers, and I'll do the flu numbers first. I think they're more important, and then these guys. So first, flu. Remember this? I did a look on this the other week, a whole video on this graph. This is flu cases, right? Canadian seasonal influenza totals based on laboratory testing case numbers, right? So you've got 42,000 in 2019, 2020, 55,000, 2017, 2018, 43,000, 2014, 15, 12,000, 2011, 2012, and in 2020, 2021, you've got 6. And I thought, man, that's wild. So I looked at some other week by week data and I added it up so this was a month of data. Sorry, this is what they did to it. They scrubbed the data, right? Exceptionally low levels. But this was originally, this chart above this on the website this is data from August 23rd to September 21st or something like that, or August 21st to September 23rd. And so I found a chart, the weeks from August 23rd to September 7th. And in that time period, there were 25 flu cases, 21 influenza A and 4 influenza B. And I thought, man, 6 is really low to have in a full month when you've got 21 from the 21st to the 7th of September. That's really low. And then so instead of, explaining that away, what did they do? They scrubbed it, right? It's gone. Here's that date. Timeline maybe as of so they updated it to October 3rd, extremely low levels. I wonder where those positive tests could be going. I wonder if they're testing for COVID before they're testing for flu. I wonder if there's any incentives to have a COVID positive person instead of a flu positive person. I wonder where the influenza went. Here's another one for the flu. This is Kyle Lamb. And he says, I'm writing a deeper dive, but here's the shocking number that should be headline news. 97.9%. 97.9% decrease of confirmed flu cases to WHO FluNet GISRS from week 15 through 40 from 2019 to 2020. So 15 through 40 is the end of the flu in the last year, and 2020 is starting it up again. Last year, 119,737 confirmed flu cases, 9.32% positive. This year, 2,457.18%. That's incredible. That's incredible. Unbelievable, in fact, right? Like that's crazy. Here's a bunch of doctors from, I think they're Norwegian. I think they say it right at the beginning. I'm going to show you just a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes. Here we go.
Hello, I'm Elke de Klerk from the Netherlands, and I want to state that we do not have a medical pandemic or epidemic. We also state that COVID-19 should not be on list A for any longer, because we now know that it is a normal flu virus, and the normal flu virus isn't on list A. So we are also starting a lawsuit to the state of the Netherlands to bring this in with a large group of doctors and a really large group of nurses also, because we have contact with 87,000 nurses that do not want the vaccine that is being prepared for us.
I'll leave it there. I think if you brought a case against the Canadian government, you would lose and probably get dealt with in a very creative way. Because, well, our courts are suspect. When the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal and the courts decide things like Doug Ford's, I can't remember which one, but violated the basic charter rights, and he had to do a notwithstanding clause to get it. One of the first things he did. They invalidate themselves. So protecting our rights like this, going up against the provincial and federal governments who are saying cases, it's not going to work. But there's a lot of people who are upset about this. There are a lot of people who are saying this is egregious and it's right in our faces, and it's not like they're trying to hide it. right? Worldwide. This is all over the world. It's not just in Canada that the flu has disappeared, right? And this is statistics. Flu is categorized by humans. We say, oh, this is this thing, categorized by humans, right? You understand? This is being done to us by humans, on purpose, by humans. Okay, it's not some magic virus. The virus doesn't know if you're going the wrong way down a grocery store aisle. The virus doesn't care if you're wearing a face mask. Humans do. Humans. The virus doesn't care, and it isn't influenced by those things. And it looks like the virus is actually just a flu, says this doctor. Netherlands, not Norway. Here's from Ireland. This is, sorry, I didn't mean to go. This is the Irish Scientific and Rational Leaders Fight Back, a full-page advertisement in the premier newspaper, the Irish Times, today, imploring us to see sense before we ruin the country. Before we ruin our city, before we ruin our province, before we ruin our country, we let these poor leaders, we let these leaders who are being led around by the nose lead us into catastrophe. Stand up and say something to our leaders. Please read the facts from the Irish government websites before doing further damage to our country. Fact, the current life expectancy for Ireland is 81.5 years. Fact, median age of death for COVID-19 is 83.2. This means that the median age of people who have died from COVID-19 have lived longer than the normal life expectancy in Ireland. Fact, 94.61% of the people who have died from COVID-19 had other underlying health conditions. Fact, a total of 20 people have died from COVID-19 who are under age 44. 2 people have died from COVID-19 between May 24th and October 6th, 2020, who are under 44. Surely there's another way to take care of the few who are vulnerable while letting our economy and futures survive. Surely there's a better way to do this. Surely there's a better way to take into account the data that is staring everyone right in their faces. Surely there's a better way to deal with our businesses than closing them. Surely there's a better way to deal with our elderly than locking them away without trial. Surely there is a better way, and I demand it. Thank you for watching, everybody. My name is Mark Peralvis. Have a wonderful, wonderful